Welcome to Moksa Workflow Manager Training Movies. This is exercise number 7, in which I will give you more information about the fine-tuning of the workflow portal. The workflow portal is integrated in sites, and only users that have the proper permission, being $workflow portal, will be able to access it. It is something that you can define, set up very easily if in the Cumulus client go to the server console, to the roles, or if you're using only users, to the users, and then you can edit the permissions, and under server permissions there is a tab called additional permissions. Here you need to add $workflow portal. If that is the case, your user will be able to access the workflow portal. This workflow portal will only show you those workflows that should be available for workflow templates. That means that in the individual workflow information window, the category information window, you had to enable the portal template checkmark. If that is not enabled, it will not show up. The workflow needs to be under $templates, otherwise it will also not show up. A third way of personalizing the access to the workflow portal templates is the fact that you can specify as a subcategory of the workflow category a name of a login or of multiple logins of users as subcategories, which will only grant access to this workflow template if you are, in this case, Peter or as a login, or VA Di Paola. Another option is to specify the name of the role. So you can have multiple roles being multiple subcategories. In this example, the Training Movies 2 will only be accessible for users who are part of the design role. So that is another possibility on how to personalize the access to the workflow templates. If a user goes to the workflow portal and has only access to one workflow template, it will auto-select it and go to the next step. You will not get the selection list if you only have access to one particular information window template. The next thing we will discuss is the possibility to show or hide the panels of your workflow configuration screen. When you start a workflow, you will have several workflow information panels available. They depend on two things. One is, did you show or hide them via the permissions? Two, is there information in there that needs to be shown? Let me start with explaining about workflow switches panel. You can define in the workflow information window, you can add workflow switches. All you have to do is add the name of the task, it's case sensitive, and maybe an explanation and a true or false value. Enable it or disable it by default. That means that if this task is disabled or enabled by the user, it will be skipped in the workflow. It will not be executed. It will go straight through that task. In case of an approval task, it will follow the path for the assets of the approved assets. For a commission task, it will follow the outlet of the provided records. In a template task, it will just take the route of the output records outlet. Those are the only 3 tasks that you can make switchable. And there's a limit of 10 workflow switches that you can set per workflow. If there are no workflow switches defined, then this panel will not appear at the start configuration screen of your workflow. Only if you have some workflow switches defined, then this panel can appear and the user can make a choice. Optionally, you can also specify the name of the role or roles that are linked to this task. That means that if a certain role has only that task to perform and you disable it, then it will also hide that role from the participants selection, so that you don't have to select a participant for a role that will not be playing any part in the workflow. The additional info fields are very similar. You can define up to 10 additional info fields that you can make mandatory or not mandatory, visible or not visible in the portal, etc. They're limited to 10. You can have text fields, drop-down fields that you can enter. If there are none defined, then again, this additional info, where the panel is called workflow info, will not show up. If it is available, then the elements that you can input, the fields, will appear in that specific panel if you did not hide it with the permissions. As you can see here in this screenshot, and here the workflow switches appears and the workflow information appears. Your additional text that you added is shown here below, and you can select enabled task or disabled task. If there is a workflow switch and you do not show the panel, you have hidden it with a permission, in that case it will take the default value of that switch. Same for the workflow information. If you did not specify any, if you specified to hide the workflow information, it will take the default values for those specific fields. You can show or hide these panels in 4 different places. You have in the Cumulus client the possibility to go to the permissions, the preferences, user settings, general, and then you go to the workflow manager, and in the workflow manager tab under general settings you will have this field. Older versions might not have this field, then you will only go to the workflow manager.xml file in the sites webinf folder, which I will show you in a minute. In here you specify all kind of stuff that is valuable, that is available for all tasks, all workflows throughout the whole workflow. These values can be overruled individually per workflow or per task or per site. So this is the top level where you can set these individual parameters. The second place where you can set these parameters is if you go to the workflow manager.xml file, which resides in your sites folder, customizations, workflow portals, depending on your version, and then workflow manager.xml, or directly under your webinf folder of that website. In older versions, this file will contain the complete list. In new versions, this will be empty or only containing those values that are different for this specific website, for this website of the workflow manager. The third place where you can specify it and where it's most logical to add the hiding of certain parts of your workflow is inside the workflow itself. So if, as an example, I start a new workflow, called training 7 hiding panels, well, at this place I can go to the information window and watch out, hide, and go to the workflow, and you can see that I can enable it, I can set additional info or workflow switches, and I have the workflow parameters here. So by specifying it here, by adding these parameters here, I enable or disable them. I overrule the predefined behavior from the levels above. As an example, we can go here and I can say I don't want to see the switch panel, but if you didn't define any, you don't have to specify that. Same for the information window. But I can decide not to show the details panel, which is the top level of your the first panel in your window. So all I have to do is paste this in here and say I hide this, so I'm setting this to true. By default, all the panels are shown. Input records. I could force the workflow to automatically have no records, no input records, or I can force it to have take them from another place. So I could say I want to hide it, in which case I will not have any input records, or I can say I do want the import, but I want to, if we specify this here, I take this and I do want to use the input records, and I want the user to be able to add comments to the individual fields. And then you have a new parameter that plays a role, is the minimum input records. You can specify the number of records that are required. If you specify 0, then there's no requirement. They can upload 0 or a lot of files. They can get them by uploading them or get them from the collection basket from sites. You can also set this, for instance, to 5, which means that they have to upload at least 5. Other values is, so from 1 to 99 means that it forces you to upload or add them from the collection basket. If you set it to 100, then you cannot upload, then you can upload, an unlimited, but you cannot add them from the collection basket. If you put them the number bigger than 100, it means that you can upload, you must upload but cannot add them from the collection basket, and it has to be that number of files. So 105 means that you have to upload at least 5 files. If you do from minus 99 to minus 1, then you cannot upload, but you must add them from the collection basket. If you set it to minus 1000, you cannot upload, but you can add them from the collection basket. Any number you like. And finally, the number I'm interested in is minus 1000. That means that you cannot upload, but it loads automatically what you selected in the collection basket. So if I put it to this value, I can now change this in my task, and I set this to minus, oh sorry, not here, to here, being minus 1000. So that is another step in the personalization of my website. Maybe I don't want the instruction tab. So again, I can show or hide this instruction tab. So I have the participants panel, which I could allow them to select, or I could hide it. I can also add the portal user, the person who goes into the portal, to be added to one of the roles, for instance to the design role, if the workflow has a design role. You can auto select participants, so I could say I want to auto select the participants. I'm putting this in and I'm going to say yes, you can select the first person in line. Maybe there's only one in there, so there is no reason to select it. Or maybe you're working with a work group where you only have one user attributed. So auto select the participants. You can add yourself to a role. I can hide then this part, so this happens behind the scenes automatically for me. Something that is also very often hidden is here, hiding the admin, the selection of the administrator. By default, you get the possibility to set an administrator for the tasks. By default, it keeps the administrator from the individual tasks as it was set in the template, but you can decide that this should be hidden, not selectable. The user shouldn't be bothered with it. We can keep and make the interface very, very easy for the user just by hiding as much as we can. Since we are asking for individual comments per image, we can also here decide to hide the additional instructions. Don't bother with the additional instructions since we are giving individual comments per image, which could be a briefing tool per image. So I'm going to select this and I'm going to say yes, you can hide that part of the portal. Let me have a look here, and so just like that, and I'm saving it. So this was an example of how to show and hide. We will just have quickly a look inside how this looks. So if I log in as a user with the permission to go into the workflow portal, I can now go in here and I see that I have the training moving 7 hidden panels. And if I select this, I only get the input records, the participants, and the additional instructions. All the rest, and this last part I should not see. So what did I do wrong? Go back to the information window, and I added hide select admin in portal, and then the last one was hide additional instructions. I did add it, but I forgot to set it to true. So you see, this way you can very quickly test immediately what you're doing. I can close this, and I didn't even have to log out. I could have just clicked on the workflow portal again, but just to be sure, I'm clicking here, going back in here, and now you see I don't have the additional instructions. I only have the participants. And why do I see no participants here specified? Because in my workflow I did not yet create any tasks, so I did not define a swim lane. So at this point it was actually premature to enable this workflow to be visible in the portal. I'm quickly going to add a task, a swim lane, and I'm going to add a task to that swim lane, a commission task. So I now have a simple workflow with one task and one swim lane. And let's make it still a little bit more flexible. I'm going to first add a new user list, add marketing, and in marketing I will now add, for instance, an approval task. So this gives me 2 tasks. Here you are. So if I go now to the workflow, if I go back to my web interface, go back to the workflow portal, I get my input records. These are the files that at this point are in my collection basket. And if I look at the participants, I see 2 roles, which are auto-selected because I auto-selected them. So that is also what we can define here. You see, we have a very, very simple interface at this point. And as I said before, you could even, if you know that these lists are only single user or only this person, then you can even hide that participant, hide that participants tab. If I click save, it will kick off this workflow. So This was yet another demo movie of Workflow Manager. Thank you for joining, and see you next time.